Alright, hello everybody. Today's review is going to be of a show from last year. I've kind of gone off my list of movies because I was just watching them in order, and then I watched a couple and didn't get a review of them done, so now I'm just kind of going on whatever I feel like watching because I've got 5 pages of stuff to go through, so I'm trying to make time for some more limited series shows or shows that ended up getting canceled after an unfortunate season one. Seems to be a thing with Netflix. I find that if they really just with Netflix, to be honest, it seems that they are the ones that do it the most, where a show is not doing well or so on and so forth, and not a lot of viewership, so that it ends up getting canceled after one season, which is unfortunate for a lot of the shows that I've watched in the past that only had like one season. Or yeah, if they're going to do it that way, I feel like Netflix does a better job on their limited series as opposed to, trying to create a show that lasts a long time. I feel like, yeah, the limited series that I have watched on Netflix are far better than some of the shows that end up getting canceled. But I feel like if you're planning for a like 3 or 4 season kind of show, they need to do a better job maybe of, you know, just kind of filming the whole thing and putting it out for people to see, because it doesn't really, yeah, like film it, film the 4 seasons, put them out, you know, as you go on, and then it's not canceled. You know what I mean? Like, maybe that would work better, because I feel like sometimes season ones can be kind of like an introduction, and then people kind of want to see what happens in season two, but unfortunately sometimes we just don't get that. But I'm not really sure if the show we're doing today, Exploding Kittens, was a limited series or not. Uh, it kind of seems like they were hoping for a second season, but I think it might have gotten canceled too. And there is an actual board game based on the show, or the show was based on the board game. I'm not sure which way around that worked, but anyway, I gave the show an 8 out of 10. It was quite comedic. Like the premise of the show, having God kind of, lose sight of what his job really was, and slowly kind of, uh, I guess not really caring what happened to humanity. Um, and it kind of shows the good and bad of both places, right? Like, or I guess both owners, like Beelzebub being the owner of hell, and she's kind of, trying to take under her father's wing, and she's not really as evil as her dad, I guess, but um, when she meets her mother in one of the episodes, her mom says, your dad was basically the same as you when he started. He didn't really know how to be truly evil either, right? So I guess she's kind of, similar to her dad in that way. Uh, and then Godcat, yeah, burning down heaven, and so he gets kicked out, and then he finds out about this merger between heaven and hell, and he has to fight to become CEO again. And then I guess they really didn't care who was CEO. They had already had the discussion about destroying humanity and starting over again. So there's a lot of crazy stuff that happens in the show, but the main thing was him being sent down to prove himself again, that he could, save one of the, I guess, quote unquote, worst families in the world. And if he could do that, then he could, get his job back in heaven. But it seems like every step of the way, his cherubs are kind of telling him, he's almost there, but he's not quite there. But really, they're just kind of stalling so they can get this merger done, and pretty much have him kicked out and find a new owner for heaven and hell. So we had Tom Ellis as Godcat. I'm going over the casting list now. Sashir Zamata as Devil Cat. Susie Nakamura as Abby Higgins. Mark Proshik as Marv Higgins. Ali Maki as Greta Higgins. Kenny Yates as Travis Higgins. And Betsy Sedera as Aiden. So Aiden and Travis were best of friends, but it seemed like at almost every turn, Aiden was trying to overthrow Travis and kind of, put his own insecurities onto Travis throughout the entire show. And Travis's life is basically online. Like, he's trying to become this, top streamer or whatever on online, and that seems to be the way most of today's stuff is going. Like the streaming business is pretty big. I feel like maybe the not necessarily gaming. I feel like that's kind of a broken one right now. It pretty much had to have been established in the gaming community already to be a popular streamer as far as gaming goes. I feel like streaming now is just kind of like whatever you can think of kind of thing, like I don't know, being as ridiculous as possible without, breaking any laws or anything. So, yeah, I feel like that's kind of, you have to kind of have like viral moment after viral moment to stay relevant, I guess, in that sort of game. So, yeah, you kind of have to have some pretty crazy ideas, but not necessarily anything, illegal, obviously. Because if you're going to have a career in that, you don't want to be getting arrested, right? So yeah, that's basically Travis's whole persona after he has been trying to get like internet famous some other way than from this old video that was uploaded when he was doing the hokey pokey, but he called it the harky parky, and everybody just starts trolling him online. And unfortunately, he finds out when they go back in time through the regret portal in the one episode that it was actually his dad that had filmed it and put it online, not really thinking anything of it. His father was just proud of him, right? So wanted to put that moment up because his kid got on stage and actually, I guess kind of faced one of his fears, but ended up kind of backfiring on him. But yeah, this family kind of does get closer as they go along. And of course, Marv, the father, is really into like tabletop, like board games, and he's pretty creative, like creatively minded, creating his own games and so on and so forth. And obviously some of the games you could tell were like based on real life games, but they had to change the names or have kind of Marv be the creator of the game so that it wasn't, like a copyright issue, I suppose. But yeah, each family had obviously their own unique like ability. Like Abby was always working on experiments. Travis had like his online thing. He was really good at games, so on and so forth. So when they do like the God games, God has Travis as like his, what do they call it? Human advisor, I guess. So Travis kind of, can make the move before it actually happens, right? Like he can see what's coming before it happens as far as games go. So I guess the dad and the son were kind of the same in a sense, and the mother and the daughter were very similar. Like she was always doing experiments and trying to, you know, find a cure for certain things and so on and so forth. But she, when they go back in the regret portal, it was kind of funny seeing the mother and daughter fight together, and she was kind of like into the violence sort of thing. It was really weird because the mother actually was in the Navy, and when she wanted to settle down after she was in Canada trying to take down this dictator, um, for flannel, what was it, flannel imports or flannel, something to do with the like flannel business. It was absolutely hilarious the reason they were trying to take him down. But uh, so yeah, I guess her biggest regret was actually having kids, not being able to take out this dictator in Canada. Um, I think it was flannel imports, and then yeah, he was trying to invade Alaska to take out uh, their whole flannel business, and she was sent to kill him, obviously, and wasn't able to get the job done, I guess. So yeah, she wanted to go back and right that wrong, but it turns out that her biggest regret was actually having kids and having to leave the Navy. And when Greta finds that out, she, kind of like, you know, doesn't want to talk to her mom and so on and so forth. But I feel like, as they're resolving their conflicts throughout the show, obviously they start to slowly come together. And I feel like the biggest problem, obviously, was that Marv and Abby were so very different. Yeah, did I say Abby was the one that was doing the experiments? No, Abby was the mother that was in the um, Navy, and Greta was the one that was doing all the experiments. So sorry if I misspoke earlier, but yeah, it was actually Greta that was doing all the experiments. She was the daughter, not Abby. I don't know why I said Abby, but Abby was the mom. Yeah, I think I might have misspoke earlier, so I apologize if I did. But uh, anyhow, and then obviously God Cat and Devil Cat, they kind of had their conflicts throughout the show, but then they ended up they ended up getting together at one of her friends' weddings, and Devil Cat ends up pregnant. So that's a whole mess at the very end of the show when all of the whole litter of cats is like raining down from the skies, and I was like, okay, this is really ending on kind of like a really big cliffhanger here. It would be interesting to see a second season, as like even if they do like a whole like another spin-off or something like that, it would be cool to see exactly where the show was going to go, because I feel like there was probably talk of a second season, but it just never happened, which is unfortunate because I would have liked to have seen exactly where they go once they've had kids. And now that now the Devil Cat is in control of both heaven and hell, what is that going to look like? Because are God and Devil Cat gonna yeah, work together, sort of thing? Like, is that how that's going to go? It's just yeah, there's a whole lot of unanswered question as to what could happen in the second season. But and then Marv working at this place called Big Bulk, all of the stuff that happens there, and he's becomes CEO after his boss Herb fakes his own death and adopts him and leaves the company with him because he's been embezzling, and it turns out he's not very good at it, so he leaves everything with Marv for him to try to figure that out, and then almost kills Abby in the process. But Marv is able to cut him off before he can get to his limo and escape. So Marv actually saves the day, and it ends up that Abby's kind of like, finding a love for him again, and the two of them actually end up connecting at the end, which was probably the biggest, because if the parents aren't really connecting, then it's going to hurt the kids, right? So bringing the parents together was probably the biggest thing that needed to happen, right? Because if they're not, somewhat on level ground, or if they're slowly falling apart, or separating slowly from one another, like, there's a balance, obviously. Like, alone time is important, but I feel like they were just always doing their own thing because they were kind of not interested in the same things. So they needed to find like a middle ground, and I feel like they finally did that at the end of the show. And of course, the kids obviously had their differences too, and I think they connected more in the God games than anywhere else, which was funny. But yeah, it was just kind of like a very dysfunctional family. They all had their own interests and own things, and they kind of stayed separate, and the dad would try to bring them together, but they just never really seemed that interested in what each other was doing, which, I mean, I guess it's kind of like, one of those broken home things, right, where you kind of do your own thing and then come together, and it was kind of like a very tense when they were all together, right? So, but eventually they do connect again, and I think they find like a very good middle ground for all of them, sort of thing. So yeah, it's important. Have your own interests, but when you're, and do things as a family too, right? Like, all of that is very important if you're going to be a cohesive unit in a house. So yeah, and I mean, these kids are both in high school, so obviously they're going to go through their own things, and it's important to, be there for them during that time, because I feel like the teenage years are really probably yeah, I would say honestly, the teenage years are probably one of the hardest of life, as far as like, you know, friends and so on and so forth go, and like, yeah, I don't know. Teenage years were wild, that's for sure. Um, and then, obviously as you get into the adult life, you kind of have to settle down a little bit and realize that you got a long life ahead of you, and so on and so forth. But yeah, so that, I guess the show can kind of teach you a few things too, right? About just being a good person and that kind of thing too. And obviously everybody has like their good and evil side, and it's important to find a balance in that, I suppose. Don't be too, kind of like the whole treat people the way you want to be treated thing, I think was really shown in this show. And obviously, you don't really know what anybody is going through until you really talk to them. So, yeah, don't just assume that. I guess don't judge a book by its cover. You know, you really have to get to know a person before you can really truly see who they actually are. I guess is kind of a lesson this show taught. But anyway, yeah, 8 out of 10 for this show, and the town's name was Horkville, which is probably one of the most hilarious things in this show, I would say. But I think I've pretty much gone over everything I can, and yeah, I guess I will see you guys in the next review. Bye bye for now.